Let's see what this is. A few people have suggested this to me. This is Ed Sheeran Dissed Me by our man Anthony Fantano. Let's see what it is. I've said before, I'm friends with Fantano, not like super good friends, but he's always been cool to me. I like him a lot. Obviously, we have very different taste in music, but I have a ton of respect for Fantano because he pioneered this whole thing. Everything that I do basically is following in the footsteps of Fantano. I think he's a great guy. He's always been super helpful and friendly to me. Nothing but good things to say about him, but I'm curious to see what this is all about. From the way people have described this, it seems like an interesting discussion. Am I an Ed Sheeran fan? Yes, I do like Ed Sheeran. I think Ed Sheeran makes great music, and he seems like a cool guy as well. So this is another one of these cases where I say, Mom and Dad, just stop fighting. Oh, why can't we just go? I just want to get along. Mom and Dad, stop fighting. That's how I feel anytime that two people that I like get in a fight. So let's see what he has to say. Before we get any further into the video, have you checked out my Spotify playlist? I add new stuff to it pretty much anytime I find a cool new song, so I update it usually a couple times a week with some new stuff. So if you are looking for new music to check out, hit the link in the description of this video.
Okay. Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. I'm coming on here to talk about a good friend of mine in the music industry. We're bros, we're besties, we're buds. Really
I thought he meant Ronnie Radke, but apparently talking about Ed Sheeran.
On a first name basis, but I prefer to call him Eddie Baby. That's, you know, sort of the funny little nickname that him and I have.
I like that. It's kind of a power move. Like he said he calls Ed Sheeran Eddie Baby, which I'm sure is a joke, but I think that's a real power move. When someone lets you know what a solid Hollywood insider they are, like when they say Bob De Niro instead of Robert De Niro, it's like, well, you know, I was talking to Bob De Niro the other day and he told me blah, blah, blah. I like that. So I gotta say like Ron Radke. That's what I gotta do. They just refer to him as Ron Radke. You know, me and Ron Radke were talking the other day and blah, blah, blah. It's a power move.
AKA Ed Sheeran. He has recently been quoted by the one and only Rolling Stone as not really caring for music critics and not seeing the point in reviews, saying, why would you need to read a review? Listen to it, meaning the music. It's freely available. Make up your own mind. We can't have this happen. Ed Sheeran's a free thinker. I had all of you eating out of the palms of my hands. And now that Ed Sheeran has said what he said, no one will ever read or listen to or watch a music review ever again. Oh my God.
You know, I've said the same thing before. I'll be curious to see what Fantano has to say about this. But I've said the same thing before. I mean, obviously, I say this as someone who, you know, makes my living talking about music on the internet. But the reason why I don't do like straight up reviews is because I kind of agree with Ed Sheeran, because you don't need me to tell you whether this is good or not. You know, go listen to it for yourself. Like, it's different. Back in the day, before you could listen to music before you bought it, or when it was much more difficult to listen to music before you bought it, I think reviews were actually valuable, because you would read that and that would help you decide whether to spend your hard-earned money on this. Because remember, back in the day, you know, CDs were like 15, 18 bucks, which was a lot of money to me, at least in 1999. 18 bucks was a lot of money. So reviews were much more valuable then. Whereas now, like, I don't need you to tell me whether the new Megan Thee Stallion song is good or not. I'll just go listen to it and I'll decide for myself. Where I think I try to be valuable is giving people context about the music, like the history or how influential this artist was or what their influences were or my thoughts on their sort of point of view, so that then when you hear the song, you have context for what you're about to hear. Here's who this artist is, here's who they came from, here's what other people think about it, and that may help you understand what you're about to watch or listen to a little bit more. So that's how I think about it. That's why I don't just do straight up reviews. But I'll see what Fantano has to say here.
Hi, Eddie, baby. Regardless of whether or not Ed Sheeran knows it or understands it, music reviews and criticism and opinions are just one sliver of the larger world of music discourse, which, despite music being freely available in one form or another since the internet and music on the internet being a thing, there has been no shortage of opinions on music. In fact, you could argue since the heydays of Spin and Rolling Stone and so on and so forth, there's more opinions than ever.
Absolutely. Totally true. This is a great point. One thing that I think maybe, I don't know if this is Ed Sheeran's point of view or not, but it's fun to follow the discourse around something. You know, like when a new TV show comes out, like the new episode of Game of Thrones would come out, or the new Star Wars, or like you want to follow the discourse. It's almost like being a sports fan. You know, you watch the game, and then right afterwards, you go on Twitter or Reddit or whatever to see what other people are saying about it. So to me, it's like half the fun of being a fan of these things. It's not just like, oh, should I spend money on this music or not? It's kind of like being part of this larger conversation. You know what I mean? And I don't know where Ed Sheeran's coming from in this, but I feel like from an artist's point of view, it's tiring to hear millions and millions of opinions on your music, you know? So I understand from an artist point of view, you know, especially someone like Ed Sheeran who doesn't need publicity, you might be like, critics should just go away because I'm tired of having all my music nitpicked to death and I don't need the publicity, so why do we need critics? I don't know.
On the internet about music. That's so weird. That goes totally against Edward's logic. I mean, with music being so freely available, why are there so many damn opinions and people reading them and listening to them and watching them? What's going on here? It's like almost as if humans validate our experiences based on.
Yeah, I mean, they can only hurt Ed Sheeran, not help him, probably how he sees it. Yeah, exactly. At this point in his career. Now, you know, when you're just coming up, you're thrilled to get any kind of review or reaction at all to your music, right? Because you're just desperate for anybody to react or give a shit about anything you do. And so like back in the beginning when I started making videos and one of my videos would get shared on Reddit, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. People are reacting to my videos. Whereas now, if I see one of my videos gets shared on Reddit, I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh no. Reddit's angry with me again. Please. Oh, God. Why do people just leave me alone? Because I don't need the attention as much anymore. You know? So my guess is that that's probably part of where he's coming from.
On the experiences of others and communicating to each other about art and various ways of interpreting art is just one of the ways we do that. And of course, art itself, all forms of art, is a way of interpreting the world and communicating that interpretation to an audience of people. But of course, Ed wouldn't see music that way because he doesn't write music with that intent. He produces a...
Well, how do you know? You don't know what his intent is. I mean, I think it's easy to say. I think Fantano's kind of saying that, well, let's see what he has to say. Let's see what he has to say.
And acoustic boy opiate for the masses. If it was...
So he's basically saying here, people enjoy talking about art, but Ed Sheeran doesn't see things that way because he doesn't make music for the sake of art. He's just doing it as like a commercial product. And maybe that's true, but I think that's a little bit of projecting. You don't know what his internal state is. You don't know why he makes music. And I don't think there's very many people who make music just purely as a commercial product. I think it just so happens that Ed Sheeran probably makes music that happens to be extremely palatable and accessible and popular with a wide range of people. But I don't think that just because his music is popular, that means his motives are, you know, somehow suspect. That's my opinion. But at the end of the day, I try to avoid speculating on what people's motives are behind their art, you know, unless they've said something about it, because there's no way for us to know what someone's internal state is. So I don't know. To me, it's kind of pointless to speculate about that.
It wasn't for the collective sharing in ideas and perspectives and opinions and philosophies about life and art and music, you wouldn't have such rich and interesting cultures surrounding genres like hip hop or punk or electronic music. And again, Ed doesn't link music opinions or perspectives to any sort of thing with his music because there is no culture surrounding his music. He just writes tracks for dressing rooms. His most
Well, I don't think that's true, actually. So he said that there's no culture around Ed Sheeran's music. And I don't think that's true. And I think, ironically, Anthony Fantano is the number one reason why that's not true. I think until very recently, there was not a serious discussion about pop. And now, because of Anthony Fantano, more than anyone else, I think there is a serious discussion around pop, which I think that's awesome. I love that because I'm a big fan of pop and I believe that it should be taken seriously as art. And Anthony Fantano has done more than anybody to legitimize pop as an art form, in my opinion. I mean, who else, if it's not him, who? So I disagree with him on that, and I think maybe Anthony realizes his own influence, but I don't know. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I think there absolutely is a serious cultural discussion around pop, and I'm happy about that.
Popular song is a shameless TLC ripoff. I mean, in one breath, Ed does actually kind of have a point, at least in regards to the albums that he drops, because as far as the art of criticism or the act of trying to, I guess, dive deeper into an album's inner workings or deeper meanings, there's not really any point in doing that with an Ed Sheeran album. It's very much a thankless act. It's a fruitless endeavor. You're never going to go into.
It's going pretty hard on Mr. Sheeran here. I won't pretend to be familiar enough with Ed Sheeran's music to go to bat for it, but I do like his songs. I feel like in the rock and metal world, people go really, really hard on women, right? I've talked about this before. I think people are really hard on women in the metal scene. And I think in pop, it's kind of the opposite. I think people go really hard on men. Like, you talk about Ed Sheeran this way, you talk about Zayn Malik this way, and that's totally fine. But if you were to talk about Lizzo or Taylor Swift this way, people would come for your head, right? So I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah, men with acoustic guitars, like sensitive men, are really not respected, in kind of the pop world, which, I don't know, kind of interesting to me. I'm surprised to hear Anthony go this hard on Ed Sheeran. I don't know.
The process of reviewing an Ed Sheeran album and find some hidden conceptual gem lying beneath the surface. What you're more likely to get is a song where you have to hear Cardi B rapping about him having jungle fever. So again, insofar as we're talking about Ed's music itself, I agree. However, me and pretty much every other music publication out there are at the mercy of the music industry and what it decides to popularize and promote, and also SEO on the internet, various social media algorithms that basically put us in a position, if we want to have a successful business model, we do have to review some really bland, uninspired, mindless pop singer-songwriter.
Oh, I thought he was talking about metal. He said we have to review bland, uninspired music, and I thought he was talking about metal. Turns out he's talking about pop. Oh, caught me by surprise there.
Bullshit every once in a while. I just feel fortunate that I'm in a position that when I hear an Ed Sheeran album, I can genuinely and honestly come on camera and say, hey, this is piss. I don't need to pretend that it's good to curry anyone's favor. I'll make a final point here as well and say this.
Coming in hot there. I did not realize that Fantano had this much of a hate boner for Ed Sheeran. Wow.
Take here from Ed is also an extreme reflection of his privilege in the music industry, because of course he views the world of music as just, make up your own mind on what's good and just listen to what the streaming platforms are giving to you.
I do agree that this is kind of like, it irritates the shit out of me when people say, let's say I express an opinion about music and people are like, why don't you just let people like what they like? Music is subjective. Well, yeah, no shit. I'm allowed to have a fucking opinion about music too, just like you. This whole reaction of when people say let people make up their own opinion and art is subjective. People always just trot that out as a way of basically saying, I disagree with you, which I think is such a fucking dumb reaction. You're allowed to have an opinion. I'm allowed to have an opinion. You don't have to listen to mine, but I'm allowed to have an opinion just like you.
namely my music. Meanwhile, there are tons of indie and underground artists out there toiling in obscurity, waiting for their chance where some kind of platform picks them up or pushes their stuff or puts their music or their video or their whatever in front of the eyes of people who actually will enjoy it. There are loads of artists who would see incredible benefits by being promoted by the industry in the way Ed Sheeran's music is.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. So he's saying basically, why don't we promote some of these, you know, independent artists who are looking for a break the same way that we promote Ed Sheeran's music? Well, I mean, life's not fucking fair, you know? Like he just said, in order to have a viable business, I have to talk about some music that I don't like. Well, aren't you part of the problem then? I'm part of the problem too. You know, like I don't really want to talk about Metallica, but I did a Metallica reaction when, you know, their new song came out because I wanted the views. It's just how it is. You know, you gotta make the content that people want. And the fact of the matter is that covering these obscure underground artists, nobody cares. It doesn't get views. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario. Why would I cover these obscure artists? There's no incentive.
By labels, by traditional media, by magazines that will basically print any crap he has to say, and of course, by streaming platforms, which Ed says again, hey, just go on there and just listen to whatever music you see or hear as soon as you go on the front page there on Spotify. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I guess I would have to know more about the context of what Ed Sheeran meant by that to have an opinion, but I agree with this. Ed is kind of biting the hand that feeds him, though, as critics and writers helped prop him up in the first place. I agree with that. And, you know, maybe he's lost sight of the fact that now that he's gotten to the top of the mountain, it's easy to sort of forget about what got you there, which is why I try to always stay grateful for the fact that anybody cares about anything I have to say about anything. You know, I will never take it for granted. I get between, 2 and 3 million views a month on YouTube. I will always, always, always be grateful for that. And I will never take it for granted that I have any kind of an audience. And, I can understand how from Ed Sheeran's perspective, maybe you lose sight of that. I don't know. But I think it's a valid opinion to sort of say, well, what's the point of music critics now? Do we really need them? I think that's a valid opinion. On the other hand, clearly the fact that Fantano has 1.6 million subscribers tells you that there are millions and millions of people who do want to hear about it. Same reason as sports. Why do we have sports commentators? Because people think it's fun to hear other people talk about sports. It's just a thing. We like hearing other people's opinions on the things we're interested in. That's a thing that people enjoy. You could say, why do we need musicians? Musicians can't build bridges. Musicians don't put people on the moon. What's the point of musicians? Well, I don't know. People like music, so I think it's an interesting debate, and those are my 2 cents on it. That's what I think. Just, Mom and Dad, please stop. Stop. Please, Mom and Dad, stop. That's what I think.